The riches are in the niches. Or if you're British, the riches are in the niches, something like that. You've heard us talk about this podcast before, if you've been following us for any number of episodes, that we talk about niching down. And that is something that is easier said than done for most people. And so we got a question recently in our community that someone asked, how do you balance niching down, but still offering enough to actually help your clients achieve their dream outcome? How do you find this balance? Because there's two extremes. Two ways you can go about this. One is you refuse to niche down at all because you are either afraid of losing work or you are trying to appeal to everyone. And because of that, we've talked about this on the podcast plenty of times, no one wants to hire you because if you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. You can't gain really any traction in any specific area because you don't become known for anything. People struggle to refer you to other people because they can't place you in a box in their head and think, oh, this specific problem, I know someone with that. I can refer you to that person. Instead, you offer everything to everyone. And if you offered every possible service to every type of potential client, it's just hard for people to even know how to categorize you in their head for referrals. And so you end up making little bits of money in lots of different areas, and it really doesn't add up to much. The extreme opposite of that is people who niche down too narrowly. You heard the advice that the riches are in the niches, and you took it to the extreme where you did something so narrow, so specific that it actually limited you. This is very rare, but I've seen it happen. You can be limited in a number of ways. One is just like being so specific that the market's not large enough to support your business. That's pretty rare, but it does happen. The other side of things is you're trying to specialize in something that's so specifically niche and narrow. It's too much of a button seat. You're not really adding enough value to somebody in order to actually like help them achieve the outcome that they're going for. And then another kind of challenge around this too narrow thing is that you struggle to get timing right. So for example, the window of them needing your service is so small. It's so narrow that if you are not at the right place at the right exact time, you miss the gig because they went with someone else. And in every niche, there's examples of this. In audio, there's mastering. Mastering is like the last little final piece. And if you aren't top of mind when they're ready to choose a mastering engineer, you lose the gig. There's lots of little like tiny specific services in video, in photo, that if you are not the person that's top of mind right then and there when they're ready to hire for that thing, you miss out. So how do we find this balance between the two extremes of trying to be everything to everyone or trying to be so uber specific that your business is struggling? We're going to talk about finding the Goldilocks zone in this episode, finding a balance where you're narrow enough to build a name for yourself, narrow enough to be known for something, narrow enough to be able to actually build the skill set required to really add value to your clients, which leads to more referrals, usually more success with your clients. We're going to find that balance between that, but it's also broad enough to where you can actually offer a transformation to your clients. You can actually keep it interesting for yourself because love it or hate it, we are creatives. We have to be fulfilled by what we do. It's not just a business for us. That's why this podcast is different than other people, because we don't just talk about just dollars and cents. We have to also be creatively fulfilled here. So if you're a freelancer, you offer creative services, you don't want to sell your soul, meaning just making dollars at all costs, this is the right episode for you. This is the right podcast for you. And that's the entire thesis of the show is how do we learn from all these other industries? How do we take outside inspiration from all the other people that are out there that are smarter than us and bring it into our world so that we can become better for it, smarter for it, and run better businesses that also, again, fulfill us because that's what we're here for. So diving into the topic here, I want to just read the post that was in our community. This is by a guy named Mike. He runs pineapple.studio. It's a video production studio that specializes in creating live video for bands, and not just bands, but specifically gig bands. So I just want to give the context there for this post. And he says, how do you balance niching down, but still offer enough to help your clients achieve their quote dream outcome? For example, my business creates promotional films for live bands. Through that process, I find that 75% of them also need some combination of a website, photos, short form content, and other visual assets. Between myself and other creators in my network, we could create exponentially more value by filling in these gaps and ultimately getting these bands closer to achieving their dream outcome, AKA for him is more shows, more fans, etc. The ultimate question is, at what point does it make sense to niche up? So that was the question. And I posted my response in the community. But I feel like there's more nuance to this than just like a quick post in there. And I wasn't fully satisfied with my response there. So I wanted to kind of take this episode to just break this apart and dive into what would you do in a perfect world? What would you do in an imperfect world? And what are some pitfalls and things that people tend to fall into when they're trying to find this niche balance, when we're trying to find something that's broad enough to be appealing, be valuable, to offer a transformation, but narrow enough to actually be a specialist. That's the big challenge here as freelancers. Most of us don't have decades of experience to build that skill set. Most of us don't have resources to truly specialize in a million different things. So we really got to pick and choose what we can be excellent at. So let's start with the perfect world first. This is the easiest to talk about because this is a theoretical example in this perfect magical world where everything lines up the exact way it should be. Super easy to talk about this. And then we'll talk about the imperfect world after this. So perfect world is you do everything under the sun that the client needs to achieve the dream outcome. In Mike's case, they're trying to get more fans, more shows, more gigs because he works with gig bands. If you don't know what a gig band is, It's like gig bands who do covers. They'll play at weddings, they'll play at parties, or just anything where they're trying to draw a crowd to it. And they either need background music or the music is the forefront, like jazz bands, people that are like trying to fill up clubs, things like that. But in the perfect world, Mike would offer every single thing that they need, from websites to short form content, whatever, like everything to the client. But if you're going to go this route, we have to avoid all specifics. This is the big challenging part that freelancers miss when they're trying to offer something that's very broad or very end goal focused. And there's a lot of moving pieces. Clients don't really care about the services unless you're like a button a seat. For button seat services, like I need a video editor. That's a button seat service. Then I care about the service that you offer there. But in what we talk about in our community is transformational services. For a transformational service, you're taking someone from point A to point B, point A to point Z in some cases, where you're transforming something. You're transforming their brand, transforming their music. In Mike's case, their positioning as a gig band into something that is a more premium gig band, something that can actually bring people out to a concert or to a show or to a club. And in these cases, the individual piecemeal services are really not the thing that matters here. The band doesn't necessarily care about the 17 services it takes them to get to the outcome. They just care about the outcome. So all of your marketing, your entire website, anything you do, whether it's ads or whether you're doing content marketing or whether you're doing short form content on socials, all of that content just needs to be about the end state of the client. Coke does this really well. If you've seen Coca-Cola ads, Coke is a weird thing. If you just think about what Coca-Cola is, it is just sugar water. Arguably good tasting sugar water. I personally have not had a Coca-Cola since I was 17. So that's about 20 years ago. It's the last time I had a Coca-Cola. I remember liking it when I was like a young kid addicted to sugar, and I would literally wake up for school and we kept our 2-liter Cokes in the fridge so they were cold, and I would just take it out and just chug the thing. I don't know how we survived. We ate so much unhealthy food, but it's basically just sugar water. It's honestly bad for you, but what Coke does amazingly well is talk about the dream end state that their customer wants, which is like a perfect, happy life. All of their ads, anything you see commercial-wise, they have this very specific, usually kind of like an orangey hue to it, unless it's wintertime, but usually it's like summer stuff right now. Everyone's having a great time. Everyone looks attractive. Everyone's holding a Coke and living their best life. They don't talk about features and benefits. They just talk about the outcome, the end state, the enjoyment of the Coke, the lifestyle you'll live if you're a Coke drinker. And as stupid as it is, this stuff works. There's a reason that Coke is worth, let me actually look this up. Right now, Coke is worth $271 billion. That's their market cap, $271 billion. I was putting my outline that Mike's marketing for his video business could be all around clients in their end state, playing in front of large crowds at large venues, great lighting, great sound. His whole shtick is like cinematic quality video, but also studio quality sound. Like he puts those two together because his background is in music production. His messaging should be around more shows, more gigs, more fans, getting paid more. When I looked at his site, he does exactly just that. If you go to pineapple.video, that's his website. He does a fantastic job at marketing services, exactly like I just said. The fact that you're helping with a video obviously is a big part of this, but the website portion, the short form media, the photos, any other like clips you're making for socials, all this other stuff is ancillary to the core of it, which is they want to appear to be more professional. It's almost for them specifically, for that type of client, it's a lot of ego. They want to just show off that they're a legitimate band. They're playing in front of crowds. And I've been in music production myself for over a decade. In that world, I know how much musicians are driven by ego. And if you know that and you understand that, and you can make your clients look and feel great, that is 99% of the battle right there. And that's a lot of the value as well that you're actually creating for them. Now we'll talk about the opposite of this, some of the mistakes later on. If you want to go check out Mike's site, we'll put it in the show notes. His site does a really good job of speaking to the end state. There's probably a few things he could tidy up here. And actually, Mike was a client of ours back in 2021 through 2022. This is the business we helped him get off the ground. But let's talk about how to actually sell this service. This is another kind of area that I think in this perfect world we need to talk through. Again, perfect world is you have all the skills you need in order to achieve the desired end state of your client. You can actually fulfill on the promise of the outcome you're giving them. How do we sell on this? So for Mike specifically, and for most people offering a transformational service, we have to do this through sales calls, a consultative selling process where it's kind of broken up into a few different phases. Like the three major phases are discovery, transition, and pitch. Those are kind of like the three big parts of a sales conversation, especially in like a consultative sell where you have to learn a lot about the client to know how best to help them. So I'm going to keep using Mike for the example in this. Sorry if I'm picking on you, Mike. But in the discovery phase, he's going to ask a lot of questions about what their current gigs are like for the bands, what they're currently getting paid, what they want to be paid, the types of venues they want to play at, and anything else you need to know from the client's perspective of like literally where are they at right now? What's the current state? And then what's the desired state? What's that point A, which is the current situation? What's the point B, which is the desired situation? So that you can position yourself as the freelancer as the best option to go from point A to point B. It's the whole discovery phase. The transition is just a short part of the discovery call that helps keep the awkwardness from going from discovery to like an actual pitch on the call to go as smooth as possible. For most people, it's going to go something like, so we've talked about, X, Y, and Z. You're trying to get to A, B, and C. I think I know enough about this to say we can help, but is there anything else that I need to know that maybe we didn't cover? Awesome. Cool. So would you like me to tell you about how we can help you? And then you go into your pitch. That's a transition. Freelancers are atrocious at this. They get sweaty palms. Oh my gosh, I have to pitch my services. Oh, and it's not that hard. Break it up into 3 to 4 core things that you help your client with without going into all the specifics of it. You keep it pretty broad. This whole part of the call should take no more than 2 to 3 minutes. And the reason people mess this up is because they spend 5 minutes or more straight just talking at the client, potential client, and giving way too many details. They end up picking apart specifics about like, oh, you use this camera, these mics, or you're going to do it in this sort of way. Every single piece of information you give somebody in a pitch that's irrelevant to actually succeeding in the project is just a way to bring up a potential objection or a red flag for the client. So what we want to do is give the broad strokes and then let them ask questions to pull out more information about the things that they actually care about. Because the number one issue, again, is giving too much information and confusing on things that they don't care about, or giving too much information on things that they do care about, but it's bringing out things that are just objections that there shouldn't really be objections. So let me just give you kind of an example pitch for Mike here. So here's how we can help. The first thing we do with all of our clients is we create what we call your cinematic reel. We're going to make a live show, or we're going to show up your live show. We're going to get all our cameras and our mics set up with our studio quality equipment, and we're just going to film a show. You're going to have a great time doing this. And the whole point of this is to make you look as professional as possible. From there, we're actually going to build a website for you, because we found that the clients that we work with create this wonderful piece of content and they don't really have a home base to share it to. So if you're trying to get gigs, those sorts of venues expect you to have a website and a presence online for them to research you, for fans to engage with. We're going to build that site for you from the ground up. And then the final thing that we really do is we create short form content for you, because it's one thing to have a video that looks amazing. It's another thing to have a website that people can come back to. But how do we actually build your fan base? How do we actually show that you're engaged in the local community and you have fans? It's by creating this short form content. So we're going to create all this for you so that you have plenty of content to share on your socials throughout the next 6-12 months. The end goal of all of this is to get you more fans and more gigs, and hopefully get higher paying gigs consistently. Do you have any questions about that? Does this sound like it could be a good fit for what you guys are doing? That's the pitch. I just kind of pulled that out of my ass. Like, I literally have 3 bullet points: create your video, build your website, create short form content. But that's how you might pitch it. 3 big steps. Does that sound like it could be a good fit for you? They usually say yes. And then you say, okay, what questions specifically do you have about that process? And that's the sales process. This is the perfect world, by the way. So in the perfect world, again, you do everything under the sun and you can fulfill on that, but you're only selling them the outcomes. Now let's talk about the imperfect world. This is where most of you are. Perfect world is a great place if we could all live there, but we don't all live there. We live in the imperfect world. In the imperfect world, you don't really have the skill set necessary to do all the things that help your client get to point B. You can definitely discover where they're at in point A. You can figure out where they want to go with point B, but that gap, that bridge that has to be built from between point A and point B, you likely don't have the skill set required to do all the things necessary to get them to point B, not fully. So in this imperfect world, which is the reality that most of us live in, there's a couple ways we can do this. The first is you either create a collective or you build an agency. That's really the only 2 options you have here. Building an agency is exactly what it sounds. You hire employees, people that can do the specialized work in the different areas that you can't handle. So in Mike's case, he might hire people on staff to do the short form content, to design the website, although he's great at that part. Actually, his site looks fantastic. Maybe he hires somebody on staff to do the photos or whatever, but anything that he can't offer on, he's got to hire people or at least a person to fill those gaps. That is the agency models, where you are literally hiring the help, the specialist, and those people can fill in all the gaps that you as the founder can't do. The other way is the collective model. And the collective model is, instead of hiring those people and taking on the hiring full-time employees or contractors and managing people and being ultimately responsible for the entire project, instead you create a collective. And the collective is where you all are essentially working towards an end goal, and the sum of all parts is greater than the individual elements of it. So for example, in Mike's case, he specializes in video and he's pretty good with websites, but he likely can't do socials. He likely can't do the photo part. And so he might find a great photographer and somebody who is great at social media management. And he partners with those people as a collective to help all of his clients work through all of these issues. Individually, they may be worth, let's just say, $1,000 for each kind of project. But together as a whole, it might be worth a total of $5,000, because each individual thing is only getting them one step closer to their end goal. All things together get them to the end goal. And so because of that, the clients are likely willing to spend a premium on that, because it's one-stop shop to get all things done versus them having to piece together each and every element and hope that they fit together perfectly. So that's the collective model. Both the agency and the collective model have their pros and cons, their challenges. Working with other people is not easy, but it's obviously doable because plenty of agencies exist and plenty of freelancers form collectives, either actual, like they say they're a collective, or they just don't even realize what a collective is and they're partnering with each other. Plenty of people do it, so it can be done. Let's continue on our imperfect world thing. So whether you're agency, collective, or you can even do it all on your own, there's still the added challenge in the imperfect world of the dream outcome being too big to sell. Another way it could be the dream outcome you're selling is just too far removed from the services you offer. Or maybe it doesn't feel like a realistic outcome for people. In any of these cases where you're trying to sell something too big or trying to sell something that you feel like is too hard for you to like promise on, the best thing you can do in these sorts of scenarios is to find a way to get the foot in the door. The foot in the door is, if there's steps 1 through 5, what is step 1? What is the thing that gets my foot in the door with the client that I can just sell them on that one narrow thing? And then once we're working together, sell them steps 2, 3, 4, or 5, or however many steps there actually are, called upselling. And if you go back to Ryan Kroll's episode back on 284, how to level up to $50,000 projects, Ryan talked through his process to get the foot in the door and then to upsell to the bigger, higher $50,000 projects is he sells them on a half-day workshop. And the half-day workshop is where they plan out their videos. And then once they've planned out this workshop, he says, essentially, you can take this to any other video shop or we can do it for you for X amount. He said that they have a 100% upsell success rate. 100% of the clients that buy that half-day workshop for $1,000, $2,000, whatever it is, 100% of those people upsell to the higher end package. So with Mike in this example, he may be in a better position just selling them on the thing that the client wants. This is especially effective when the thing that the client wants is this first step. And then the things that they need are all these back-end things. That's another really important step here is like sometimes the big transformation you're taking them through, the client doesn't even think they want, or they don't really know they want that. They just want to focus on the fun part. Again, making a video of some sort or a live video that makes them look good ego-wise. So when you sell them on the front end thing, the foot in the door thing, the live video portion here, Mike can just put all his energy on just selling that video. He's going to adjust his website and his sales process just to really selling them on that one thing, just that video, just the foot in the door. And then on the back end, he can sell them the website. He can sell them the social media management. He can sell them on any other things that the client might need going from step 1 through 5. Now let's talk about what to avoid here. What to avoid when we're trying to find this perfect balance of how we get narrow enough to make sure our messaging is laser focused, narrow enough to where people can place this in their heads as like, Mike's the live video guy. Mike can get cinematic quality video and studio quality sound at a live show to make you look amazing. That's an easy place for people to put you in their head. But if you're just the person who does all videos for all bands, it's just difficult to be the specialist there. So that's kind of the first thing to avoid here is just casting the net that's too wide. In Mike's case, he's helping gig bands get more fans and shows through cinematic quality live video. That's great. It's very specific. But the flip side is helping musicians get more fans and shows, or just making videos for bands. That is such a broad thing that when you look at something that's that specific, helping gig bands, specifically gig bands, get more fans and shows through cinematic quality live video, that is so specific that I'm able to refer. I'm able to personally, literally right now, think of 2 or 3 people that could use that service in my local network here in Nashville, although Mike's in Ohio, but maybe Mike travels, I don't know. But if you're a videographer who just does any sort of video for any sort of band, I don't know if I can help you because there are people that do music videos for metal bands. There are people that their cinematic style matches more solo pop artists. And so it's harder for me to place you in my mind if you just try to do all things for all people. So that's the first issue is casting a net that's too wide. The rule of thumb here, by the way, is offer one clear outcome. So for Mike, it's more fans and shows through cinematic live video. So that's one clear outcome. And then one client type, specific client type, clear client type. The best way to think about this is that a word they self-identify with. I don't know the gig band community well. I've never been in a gig band. I don't know many gig bands, but I think maybe that's a word they resonate with. At least in Mike's case, it seems to be working well based on a when he shared with me recently. But the issue that many freelancers have here is they choose a client type that is not something they self-identify with. If I put a lot of potential clients in the room, how do they gather? What are they actually bonding over? What kind of groups do they form into? The example I've used on this podcast before is if I try to create an ad calling out men, that is like, half the population, but it's not a very strong identifier. If I say 37-year-old men, that's pretty specific. If I say 37-year-old men living in Nashville, that's very specific. That's me and maybe another 30,000 people. I don't know what the numbers would be. If I say 37-year-old business owners living in Nashville, that's pretty damn specific. I'm probably going to perk my ears up there if I hear an ad or see something that calls that specific thing out because it's so damn specific. I would identify with that. But at a certain point, it gets way too specific. We've gone too far the other way. So when we're talking about self-identifying things, we're trying to find words that people can resonate with. So that's the first thing to avoid, is casting a net that's too wide. The second thing to avoid is trying to sell them on a bunch of individual services. I talked about this throughout this episode. Unless you're offering just one specific button seat service, then these services should be no more than just a brief section of your website, no more than a small mention somewhere. Don't devote a bunch of real estate to this. Please, God, don't list out 15 different services. Just list the outcomes those services would really help for. But the mistake I see so many freelancers do is they try to list 10 different services on their website, hoping they're just going to get a couple clients each year for each one of the services. It doesn't work that way. If you're offering a transformational service that involves 15 different services, you're helping people get to a transformational outcome, and it takes those 15 services, then just talk about the outcomes and skip the 15 services. The client don't care. The clients do not care at all. So that's the second big mistake, trying to sell them on a bunch of individual services, or even just trying to mention the individual services. And the third big mistake to avoid right now is biting off more than you can chew. Most of the time, there are specialists in any kind of creative niche who are better at their one thing than you. And whenever possible, partnering with those people or teaming up in some way or hiring those people, even if it's just for one-off projects, is going to end up with a better end result than just you and your little silo trying to do something you're not great at. 3 button seat freelancers who form a collective are going to be worth more than those 3 individual button seat freelancers. So the challenge here is getting outside of your comfort zone and realizing that at the grand scheme of things, you don't matter to your clients. I'm sorry. This is just being a little real with you. Your clients don't really care about you. They care about what you can help them achieve. Unless they really have a close relationship with you, they do care about you, obviously. In the context of getting a stranger to hire you, freelancer, which is what we all want. You don't want just the people who know you hire you, because then you run out of clients pretty quick. Or you just have to be a constant social butterfly all the time, which is fine if that's what you love, but many people aren't built that way. So if we're trying to get strangers to hire us outside of our networks, then they generally just don't care about us. Why would they care about us? The value we add is all around the services that we offer. And when we start breaking down all the individual services we offer, the gear we might have access to and the programs we use, that's all stuff that's 100% irrelevant to them. But if all you talk about instead of services or gear or software, all you talk about is the outcomes you can help your clients achieve, the things you've helped other clients achieve, all of a sudden, those clients start caring a lot more about you because they see you as somebody who can take them to where they want to go. And whether it's B2B, where you're helping your clients earn more money from their businesses, or B2C, business to consumer, or even business to creatives, where you're a studio helping other creatives like musicians see their visions with their music, gain fans, whatever outcome you're leading your clients towards, whether it's artistic, whether it's aspirational, whether it's ego-driven, whether it's financially driven. As soon as your clients see you as the potential vehicle to get them where they want to go, they all of a sudden start viewing you as someone that they value. They start caring about what you have to say or what you have to do. And until you've proven that point and you've shown that you can actually help, they don't care. So that's my rant. If you are struggling with this and you're trying to find that perfect balance between niching down and you want the same help that I gave Mike a couple years ago to shift his business, to completely change his business, going from audio into video, in his case, or whatever transition you're trying to make in your business, to be narrowly focused, but broad enough to add value, just go to sixfigurecreative.com/coaching. Watch the video there. It just walks through all the ways that we can help. And if it sounds like a good fit, just fill out the application. Otherwise, I will see you next week on the Six Figure Creative Podcast. Bye.